Can you pretend you're not my husband tonight? She asked while putting on her red dress by the Christmas tree. I looked at the lights, smiled, and said, okay. I drove her to the Christmas party and dropped her off. I went home to a half-decorated tree, packed my clothes, and left the house. At 1 a.m., on Christmas morning, she called crying for a ride. I said I'm still pretending and hung up. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. The strand of Christmas lights refused to cooperate. Henry Mercer crouched on the worn hardwood floor of his living room, threading the wire through his calloused fingers, searching for the dead bulb that killed the whole string. Outside, December snow drifted past the window in lazy spirals, coating Maple Crest Drive in white silence. The house smelled like pine and cinnamon candles, the kind his wife bought in bulk every November because they were on sale. Can you pretend you're not my husband tonight? The words landed like a stone in still water. Henry's hands stopped moving. The wire went slack between his fingers. He didn't turn around immediately. Instead, he stared at the half-lit tree, watching the warm glow fade into shadow where the broken strand began. His daughter Emma's paper snowflake dangled from a lower branch, crooked but carefully colored. His son Tyler's clay ornament from second grade hung beside it, the paint chipped but the thumbprint still visible in the red glaze. Behind him, he heard the rustle of fabric. Shirley was adjusting something. He could picture it without looking. The way she'd smooth the dress down over her hips, check herself in the mirror over the mantel, tuck a strand of blonde hair behind her ear with that nervous gesture she'd had since college. It's my sister's work party, Shirley added, her voice carrying that forced brightness she used when she knew she was asking for something unreasonable. Her boss is weird about married people. You know how corporate events can be. Just for tonight. It's not a big deal. Henry set the lights down carefully. His knees cracked as he stood, the sound loud in the sudden quiet. He was 41 years old. He'd worked maintenance for Cedar Falls School District for 17 years. He fixed broken things for a living. Leaking pipes, flickering lights, stuck doors. He was good at it. Reliable. The kind of man who remembered to take the trash out on Sunday nights and never missed a parent-teacher conference. He turned. Shirley stood by the couch, one hand on her hip, the other clutching a small black purse. The red dress was new. He'd never seen it before. It fit her well, too well, maybe for a work party. The neckline dipped lower than anything she'd worn to church or school functions. The fabric caught the light from the half-lit Christmas tree, making her look like someone he didn't quite recognize. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. Henry's eyes went to her left hand first, an automatic check, the way you'd glance at a clock or test a door handle. The pale indent was still there on her finger, a band of skin slightly lighter than the rest, but the gold band itself was gone. Okay, Henry said. The word came out flat. Neutral. He didn't trust himself to say more. Shirley's expression shifted. Relief, maybe, or something close to it. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Thank you. I knew you'd understand. It's just easier this way. Less questions. You know how people can be. Henry nodded. He picked up the broken strand of lights again, running it through his hands, feeling for the loose bulb. His heart was beating too fast, a dull thud in his ears that had nothing to do with standing up too quickly. What time do you need to leave? He asked. 7. The party starts at 7:30, but Melissa wants to get there early. Shirley moved toward the hallway, toward their bedroom. I need to finish getting ready. Can you make sure Tyler finishes his homework? And Emma needs to practice piano. I'll handle it, Henry said. She paused in the doorway. For just a moment, she looked back at him, really looked at him, and something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe, or doubt. But then it was gone, replaced by that same bright, false smile. You're the best, she said, and disappeared down the hall. Henry stood alone in the living room, the broken lights in his hands, and felt something inside him crack. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a clean, quiet break like ice on a pond in early spring, the kind you don't hear until you're already falling through. Tyler was sprawling on his bed upstairs, math worksheet half finished, when Henry knocked on the doorframe. The boy looked up from his phone, earbuds dangling from one ear. Mom says you need to finish homework before dinner, Henry said. I'm almost done. Tyler was 13, all elbows and attitude lately, but still young enough to believe his parents when they said everything was fine. Where's Mom going? Aunt Melissa's work thing. Why can't you go? Henry leaned against the doorframe. Through the window, he could see their neighbor's Christmas lights blinking in steady rhythm. Red, green, white, red, green, white. She wants to go with her sister. Girl time, I guess. Tyler shrugged and went back to his phone. Whatever. Henry wanted to say something else. Wanted to explain or warn or somehow prepare his son for what he was starting to suspect. But Tyler was 13. He deserved to be 13 a little longer to worry about math homework and video games and whether the girl in his English class liked him back. Finish the worksheet, Henry said instead. I'll call you when dinner's ready. Emma was easier. At 9 years old, she still believed in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy and the fundamental goodness of her parents. She sat at the piano in the den, picking out Jingle Bells with careful concentration, her tongue sticking out slightly as she counted beats. Henry stood in the doorway and watched her play. Her dark hair, his hair, not Shirley's, fell across her face as she leaned forward to reach the higher keys. She was wearing her favorite purple sweater, the one with the cat on it that Shirley said made her look babyish. That sounds great, sweetheart, he said when she finished. Emma beamed at him. Mom says I need to practice for the recital. Your mom's right. Henry crossed the room and ruffled her hair gently. You're getting really good. Are you and Mom going to come watch? Of course, Henry said and meant it. Whatever was happening between him and Shirley, whatever was about to happen, Emma's piano recital would be attended. Some things were non-negotiable, even if it's on a school night. Even then, Emma grinned and turned back to the piano, starting Jingle Bells again from the top. Henry stood there a moment longer, listening to the simple melody fill the house, trying to memorize this moment before everything changed. The drive to Riverbend Event Hall took 20 minutes through light snow and evening traffic. Henry kept the radio off. Shirley filled the silence instead, talking in that nervous, rapid way she had when she was anxious or guilty or both. Melissa's boss is apparently really strict about the guest list, she said, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. Only employees and their single guests. I think it's some insurance thing, or maybe liability. I don't really understand corporate policies. Henry's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The leather creaked under his grip. Right, and the parking is supposed to be terrible. Melissa said to just drop me off at the front. You don't need to find a spot or anything. Okay, I'll probably be done by 11. Maybe midnight. Is that too late? I'll be around, Henry said. Shirley glanced at him. Then, something uncertain in her expression. The passing lights caught her face in alternating shadow and glow. You're not mad, are you? Should I be? No. No, of course not. It's just a party. She laughed, but it sounded forced. I'm probably overthinking this whole thing. Melissa's always dramatic about her work events. Remember last year when she made everyone dress up for that team-building thing at the bowling alley? Henry remembered. He'd been invited to that one. They'd bowled 3 games and eaten mediocre pizza, and Shirley had complained the whole drive home about how boring it was. This one's at a nicer venue, Shirley continued. The Riverbend place is supposed to be really beautiful. They have this whole ballroom with windows overlooking the river. Melissa showed me pictures. Henry took the exit toward downtown. The event hall was near the old part of Cedar Falls, where the buildings had exposed brick and the restaurant had names like the Foundry and Millstone Bistro. Places where entrees cost $30 and the wine list was longer than the food menu. Are you sure you're okay with this? Shirley asked again, quieter now. Henry pulled up to the front entrance. Through the glass doors, he could see soft lighting and people in cocktail attire milling about. A woman in a black dress laughed at something a man in a suit said. Christmas decorations draped the lobby. Tasteful, expensive-looking, nothing like the tangled lights and construction paper snowflakes at home. I'm sure, Henry said. Shirley gathered her purse and reached for the door handle. She hesitated, her hand on the latch, and for a wild moment Henry thought she might change her mind. Might say, forget it, this is stupid, let's go home and finish decorating the tree together. Instead, She leaned over and kissed his cheek quickly. Her perfume was different, too. Something he didn't recognize, something that probably came in a bottle with a French name. "Thank you," she said. "You're really understanding about this." Then she was gone, stepping out into the cold, pulling her coat tighter as she hurried toward the entrance. Henry watched her go, watched her pause at the doors to check her reflection in the glass, watched her smile at the man holding the door open for her, a smile Henry hadn't seen in months, bright and genuine and full of possibility. She disappeared inside without looking back. Henry sat in the idling truck for a long moment, engine rumbling, heat blasting from the vents. Snow accumulated on the windshield in fine, crystalline patterns. He could go home, could trust her, could believe that this was really about her sister's weird boss and complicated corporate policies. He could pretend, but he'd spent 17 years fixing broken things, and he knew the sound they made right before they fell apart completely. Henry put the truck in drive and pulled away from the curb, away from the warm lights and Christmas decorations and whatever was happening inside that he wasn't supposed to see. He went home. The house was quiet when he returned. Tyler had finished his homework and retreated to his room. Emma had gone to bed early, tired from piano practice and the general excitement of December. Henry moved through the rooms, turning off lights, checking locks, going through the motions of his evening routine while his mind spun in circles. He made a sandwich he didn't eat. He loaded the dishwasher. He folded laundry that had been sitting in the basket for 2 days. Normal things, grounding things, things that kept his hands busy while his thoughts raced. At 9:30, he sat down at the kitchen table with the family laptop. It wasn't snooping, he told himself. They share the computer. It was in the kitchen, in a common area, used by everyone for homework and bills and looking up recipes. There was no password on it, because they'd agreed years ago that they had nothing to hide from each other. Henry opened the browser. The history was already there, pages Shirley had looked at but hadn't bothered to delete. He scrolled through them slowly. Real estate listings in Des Moines. Divorce attorney websites. An article titled "Starting Over After 40, A Woman's Guide." His chest tightened. He clicked on her email. It was already logged in, the inbox full of messages he'd never thought to read before. Most were spam, or newsletters, or confirmation emails from online shopping. But there, near the top, were messages from someone named Mike_Riverside42. Henry opened the first one. "Can't stop thinking about last Tuesday. When can we meet again?" He opened another. "Does he suspect anything? Be careful." Another. "You deserve better than this. You deserve to be happy." The messages went back months. Spring, summer, all the way through fall. Planning meetups. Complaining about spouses. Shirley writing things like "stuck in this life" and "married too young," and just going through the motions with a man who doesn't even see me anymore. Henry sat very still. The refrigerator hummed in the corner. The heating kicked on with a soft whoosh. Outside, someone's dog barked twice and then went quiet. He read every message. Every single one. The complaints about him being boring, predictable, always choosing the safe option. The fantasies about running away to somewhere new. The explicit messages that made his stomach turn. The plans to meet at the Riverside Cafe. That was what Mike_Riverside42 meant, apparently. A man who worked in the same building as Melissa, who Shirley had met at some office party 6 months ago. By 10:30, Henry had seen enough. He didn't yell. He didn't break anything. He didn't even close the laptop too hard. Instead, he got up calmly, walked to his small home office, really just a converted closet with a desk and filing cabinet, and pulled out a notebook. A simple composition book with a black and white marbled cover, the kind Tyler used for school. Henry opened it to the first blank page and began to write. He documented everything in careful, methodical detail. Dates of messages, names mentioned, times and places of meetups. He took screenshots of particularly damning messages and saved them to a flash drive he kept in his desk drawer. He printed out bank statements showing cash withdrawals he hadn't known about. $400 here, $200 there, amounts small enough not to trigger alerts, but large enough to add up over time. He worked like he worked on repair jobs at the school. Systematically, thoroughly, checking twice to make sure everything was documented correctly. This wasn't anger. This was preparation. By midnight, He had 15 pages of notes and a flash drive full of evidence. Henry closed the notebook and sat back in his chair. Through the small window of his office, he could see his neighbor's Christmas lights still blinking steadily. Red, green, white. Red, green, white. He thought about Tyler's math homework, about Emma's piano recital, about 17 years of fixing broken things and coming home every night to a house that was supposed to be solid ground. Henry stood up and walked to the bedroom. He pulled his old duffel bag from the closet, the one from his Army days, before he'd gotten out and gone to trade school and met Shirley at a community college mixer where she'd laughed at his terrible jokes. He packed methodically, clothes for a week, toiletries, his good work boots. The notebook and flash drive went in last, tucked in the side pocket where they wouldn't get crushed. The kids were asleep. He checked on both of them, standing in their doorways, watching them breathe in the dark. Tomorrow he'd explain things. Tonight, they could sleep. In the living room, he paused by the half-finished Christmas tree. The broken strand of lights still lay on the floor where he'd left them hours ago. Henry picked up his wedding ring from his finger, the simple gold band they bought at the mall because they couldn't afford anything fancy, and hung it on one of the tree branches, right next to Emma's paper snowflake. Then he picked up his duffel bag, walked out the front door, and locked it carefully behind him. The snow had stopped. The street was silent. Henry threw his bag into the truck and sat in the driver's seat for a moment, engine off, watching his breath fog in the cold air. He'd call his brother in the morning. Dave would let him crash on the couch for a few days, no questions asked. He'd call a lawyer after that, and he'd call the bank as soon as they opened to separate the accounts. But tonight, right now, he just sat in the cold truck and felt the clean, quiet brake inside him finish its work. Henry started the engine and pulled away from the house on Maple Crest Drive, leaving behind the Christmas lights and paper snowflakes and everything he'd thought was solid. Henry's phone rang at 1:18 in the morning. He was lying on Dave's lumpy couch, staring at the ceiling, not sleeping. The blue glow of the phone screen lit up the dark living room. Shirley's name appeared with her contact photo, a picture from 3 years ago, both of them smiling at Emma's birthday party, back when smiling together didn't require effort. He let it ring 4 times before answering. "Henry, I need a ride. Please." Her voice was high and strained, tears making the words thick. Not drunk. He heard her drunk before, and this wasn't that. This was panic. "Where are you?" "Riverbend. I shouldn't have come alone. Please, Henry. I need you." Henry sat up slowly. Through the window, he could see streetlights casting orange pools on the empty road. Dave's neighborhood was quiet at this hour, everyone asleep in their neat suburban houses with their intact marriages and their uncomplicated lives. "I'm still pretending," Henry said. The line went silent. He could hear her breathing, shallow and quick. "What? You asked me to pretend I wasn't your husband tonight," Henry said calmly. "I'm still pretending." "Henry, this isn't." He ended the call. The phone rang again immediately. He declined it. It rang again. He turned the phone face down on the coffee table and lay back on the couch, staring at the ceiling while the phone buzzed against the wood like an angry insect. After the 5th call, the buzzing stopped. Henry closed his eyes but didn't sleep. By 7 in the morning, Henry was sitting in his lawyer's waiting room with a large coffee and the notebook from last night. The office was in a converted house downtown, the kind with creaky floors and crown molding that probably cost extra in the rent. Pictures of the lawyer's family lined the walls, professional photos in matching outfits, everyone smiling with perfect teeth. Barbara Chun had handled Dave's divorce 3 years ago. She was 50-something, gray-haired, and had a reputation for being thorough and unsentimental. She didn't try to be your friend or therapist. She just did the work. "Mr. Mercer," she said, ushering him into her office at 7:30 sharp. "Dave spoke highly of you. Said you were a good man going through a hard time." Henry sat in the leather chair across from her desk. Morning light filtered through half-closed blinds, striping the room in shadow and gold. "I need to file for divorce. Tell me everything," Barbara said, pulling out a legal pad. So he did. He told her about the Christmas tree and the red dress and the missing wedding ring, about the drive to Riverbend and the way Shirley had smiled at the man holding the door, about the laptop and the messages and the months of lying and the cash withdrawals. He slid the notebook across the desk and the flash drive with the screenshots. Barbara read in silence, occasionally making notes. Her face revealed nothing, just professional focus, the kind you'd want in a person fighting your battles. "This is substantial documentation," she finally said. "You've been thorough." "I fix things for a living," Henry said. "I'm good at seeing the problem clearly." "The court will appreciate that." Barbara tapped her pen against the legal pad. "Based on what you've shown me, we can file for divorce on grounds of adultery. Iowa is a no-fault state, but this kind of evidence matters when we discuss custody and asset division. I want full custody of the kids. Given her documented affair and financial deception, we have a strong case. Has she been a good mother otherwise?" Henry thought about Emma's piano practice and Tyler's homework, about the lunches packed and the parent-teacher conferences attended. Shirley had her faults. Clearly, she had many faults, but she'd never neglected the kids. "She's been there for them," Henry admitted. "But this is going to hurt them badly. I want to be the one who keeps them stable." Barbara nodded. "We'll file for primary physical custody with the court. We'll also request immediate separation of all financial accounts and assets." "You said she doesn't have her own income?" "She works part-time at the library, maybe 15 hours a week. That's going to be a problem for her." Barbara made another note. "She'll struggle to secure legal representation without access to your joint accounts." "That's not cruelty. That's protecting yourself. She made choices that have consequences." Henry finished his coffee. It had gone cold, bitter at the bottom of the cup. "How fast can we do this?" "I can file the petition today. The sheriff will serve her within 48 hours. Once she's served, she'll have 20 days to respond." Barbara looked up from her notes. "This is going to get messy, Henry. She's going to be shocked, angry, desperate. Are you prepared for that?" "Yes," Henry said, and he meant it. The first call Henry made after leaving the lawyer's office was to his parents in Phoenix. His father answered, voice rough with sleep. It was only 5:30 there, the sun not yet up over the desert. "Dad, I need to tell you something." Henry explained it all in clear, unemotional terms. The affair, the lying, the divorce filing. He didn't embellish or dramatize. Just facts, laid out like parts of a broken machine he was disassembling. His father listened in silence, then said, "You did the right thing, son. You wanted to come out there." "Not yet, but I might need help with the kids once things settle." "Anytime. Your mother's going to want to talk to you." His mother got on the line, already crying softly. "Oh, Henry, I'm so sorry. Are the children okay?" "They don't know yet. I'll tell them today after school. That poor Emma. And Tyler. They'll be okay, Mom. I'll make sure of it. What can we do?" "Just be ready to help if I need you. And don't reach out to Shirley." "Not yet." His mother hesitated. She'd always liked Shirley, had welcomed her into the family without reservation, had helped pay for part of the wedding when money was tight. She made her choice, his mother finally said, voice hardening in a way Henry had rarely heard. "We support you." The second call was to Dave, who was at work but stepped outside to take it. "Thanks for letting me crash last night," Henry said. "Anytime. You doing okay?" "I filed this morning." Dave whistled low. "That was fast." "You're sure?" "Completely." "Good. Don't second-guess yourself." "I second-guessed myself for 6 months, and it just made everything worse." Dave paused. "You need anything else?" "I need to close our joint bank accounts." "Can you meet me at the credit union at lunch?" "Done." The third call was to Shirley's mother. This one was harder. Patricia Vance had been a second mother to Henry for 17 years. She taught him her pot roast recipe and helped them with the down payment on the house and babysat more times than he could count. She'd always treated him like the son she'd never had, and Henry had genuinely loved her for it. "Patricia," he said when she answered. "It's Henry." "Oh, Henry, I was just thinking about you. Shirley called me this morning in quite a state. Something about you leaving in the middle of the night. I told her there must be some misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding. I'm filing for divorce." Silence. "Patricia, I'm here." Her voice had changed, gone flat and careful. "Why?" Henry told her. Not everything. She didn't need the explicit details, but enough. The affair, the lying, the months of deception, the way Shirley had asked him to pretend he wasn't her husband, so she could go to a party with another man. When he finished, Patricia sighed. It was a long, sad sound, full of disappointment and resignation. I was afraid of something like this, she said quietly. You knew, not specifically, but Shirley's been restless for a while now. She's my daughter, and I love her, but I'm not blind. Patricia paused. What do you need from me, Henry? I need you to know I tried. I need you to know I'm not doing this to hurt her. And I need you to understand that I'm going to protect my kids first. Those are my grandchildren. I know, and you'll always be their grandmother. But I can't let Shirley come back from this like nothing happened. I can't pretend anymore. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Henry could hear the television in the background, the familiar sounds of morning news. You're a good man, Henry, she finally said. My daughter is a fool. By noon, Henry had accomplished more than he'd thought possible in a single morning. The joint checking account was split, with his portion transferred to a new account at a different bank. The savings account was frozen pending divorce proceedings. The credit cards were canceled. The phone plan was adjusted. Henry kept his line in the kids' lines, but Shirley's was shut off entirely. He did it all calmly, signing forms and answering security questions, while Dave stood beside him offering moral support and occasional nods of approval. You're like a machine, Dave said as they left the credit union. I'm tired of being the reliable one who gets screwed, Henry said. They grabbed lunch at a diner near the courthouse, burgers and fries that Henry ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Dave kept up a steady stream of conversation, talking about work and his own kids and the latest drama with his ex-wife's new boyfriend. Safe topics, normal topics, things that had nothing to do with Christmas trees and red dresses and messages from Mike_Riverside42. Henry's phone buzzed constantly throughout lunch. Shirley's calls went straight to voicemail. Her texts piled up, progressing from confused to angry to desperate. Why aren't you answering? What's going on with the bank accounts? Call me now. Henry, please. I can explain everything. You're scaring me. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. Can we talk? He read them all. He responded to none of them. Cold, Dave observed, watching Henry's face. Necessary, Henry corrected. At 2 o'clock, Henry picked up Tyler and Emma from school. They piled into the truck with their backpacks and lunchboxes, arguing about something that happened at recess. Normal kid stuff. Normal kid voices. Where's Mom? Emma asked, buckling her seatbelt. She's dealing with some things, Henry said. We're going to stay at Uncle Dave's for a couple days. Why? Tyler's teenage radar for parental drama was already pinging. Because Dad needs some space to think, Henry said carefully. And I need to talk to both of you about some grown-up stuff. But not right now. Right now, I thought we'd go get ice cream. Emma perked up immediately. Really? On a Monday? Why not? They went to the local ice cream place that stayed open year-round despite the cold. Emma got mint chip. Tyler got cookies and cream. Henry got nothing, but sat with them in a corner booth while they ate and chattered about school and friends and the upcoming Christmas play. Normal. He tried to give them normal. But Tyler kept watching him with those two sharp eyes, and Henry knew the questions were coming soon. The sheriff served Shirley at 3:15 in the afternoon. Henry knew because his lawyer called to confirm. She was at her sister's house, Barbara said. Apparently she's been staying there since last night. The deputy said she became quite emotional when she understood what was happening. Did she sign the acknowledgement? She did. You're officially in proceedings. Barbara paused. She's going to call you. I won't answer. Good. Let everything go through me. That's what I'm here for. Henry hung up and sat in Dave's living room while the kids did homework in the kitchen. Through the wall, he could hear Emma singing softly to herself, some pop song from the radio. Tyler was silent, probably texting friends or playing games on his phone instead of actually doing algebra. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. Henry's phone rang at 3:47. Shirley. Will it go to voicemail? It rang again at 3:53. Voicemail. At 4:02, Melissa called. Henry answered. What the hell are you doing? Melissa's voice was sharp with fury. My sister is falling apart. She can barely breathe. Do you have any idea what you've done? I protected myself and my children from a cheater, Henry said calmly. A cheater? Henry, you can't be serious. Whatever you think you know. I know everything, Melissa. I've read the messages. I have dates and times and screenshots. I know about Mike from your office. I know about the cash withdrawals. I know that you helped cover for her more than once. So don't call me and act shocked. Melissa went quiet. Did you know? Henry asked. When you asked me to pretend I wasn't her husband at your work party, did you know she was meeting him there? Did you know? Yes, Melissa whispered. But Henry, she's my sister. What was I supposed to do? Tell her to stop. Tell her to get counseling. Tell her she was destroying her family. Henry's voice remained level, almost conversational. Instead, you help her lie. So don't call me expecting sympathy. He hung up. The phone rang 4 more times in the next hour. Shirley twice. Her mother once. A number he didn't recognize that he assumed was one of their mutual friends who'd heard the news somehow. He answered none of them. At 6, he made dinner for the kids, spaghetti from a jar, garlic bread from the freezer, the kind of meal he could make without thinking. They ate in Dave's kitchen, Emma chattering about her piano teacher's new puppy, Tyler pushing pasta around his plate and saying nothing. After dinner, Henry took them to the living room. I need to tell you both something, he said. They sat on the couch, suddenly wary. Kids always knew when serious talks were coming. They could smell it in the air like smoke before fire. Mom and I are getting divorced, Henry said simply. It's going to happen pretty quickly, and it's going to change some things, but I need you both to know that none of this is your fault. Emma's eyes went wide. What? What? Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and hurt each other, and when that happens, they can't stay married anymore. What did you do? Emma's voice cracked. She was already crying, tears streaming down her face without sound. I didn't do anything, sweetheart. This was Mom's choice. Tyler had gone very still. Is she seeing someone else? Henry looked at his son, 13 years old, too smart for comfortable lies. Yes, I knew it, Tyler said flatly. She's been different, secretive. Tyler, I'm not stupid, Dad. I could tell something was wrong. Tyler stood up abruptly. Can I go to my room? We're at Uncle Dave's. You don't have a room here. Then can I go outside? Henry wanted to say no, wanted to keep his son close, to explain everything, to somehow make this hurt less. But Tyler's face was shuttered and angry, and sometimes teenagers needed space to process things their own way. Stay in the yard, Henry said. Tyler left without another word, the front door closing with careful quietness that was somehow worse than slamming. Emma crawled into Henry's lap, something she hadn't done in at least a year. She was getting too big for it, all knees and elbows, but Henry held her anyway while she cried into his shoulder. I want Mom, she sobbed. I know, baby. Why did she do this? I don't know. That was the truth. Henry didn't understand how someone could have everything, a home, children who loved her, a husband who worked hard and stayed faithful, and still choose to throw it away. People make bad choices sometimes. Is she coming back? Not to live with us, but you'll still see her. She's still your mom. Are you sure it's her fault? Emma pulled back to look at him, her face red and wet. Are you really sure you didn't do anything wrong? And there it was, the question Henry had been asking himself since discovering those messages. Had he been too boring, too predictable, too focused on fixing broken boilers and unclogging drains to notice his wife slipping away? Maybe, but he hadn't cheated. He hadn't lied. He hadn't asked her to pretend he didn't exist. I'm sure, Henry said gently. I'm not perfect, Emma, but I didn't break our family. That was Mom's choice. Emma buried her face in his shoulder again and cried until she was too exhausted to cry anymore. Henry held her, rocking slightly, while through the window he could see Tyler sitting on Dave's front steps in the December cold, still as stone, staring at nothing. Shirley moved into Melissa's basement 3 days after being served. Henry knew because his lawyer told him, and his lawyer knew because Shirley's hastily retained attorney had listed it as her temporary address in the initial response to the divorce filing. The response itself was weak, desperate, full of requests for temporary spousal support and pleas for shared custody that Barbara dismissed as unserious. She can't afford her own lawyer, Barbara explained during their meeting 2 weeks before Christmas. She's using someone from a discount legal clinic. They're doing their best, but they're overwhelmed and underfunded. This is going to be easier than I thought. I don't want easy, Henry said. I want fair. Fair is easy in this case. You have documentation, stable income, and a history of being the primary caregiver while she was off having an affair. The court's going to side with you. Henry nodded and signed another form. His life had become a series of forms lately, petitions and motions and financial disclosures. He signed them all carefully, dating each one, building a paper fortress around his children and himself. The kids were adjusting slowly. Tyler had become even more withdrawn, spending hours in his room at Dave's house with headphones on, avoiding questions. Emma cried less, but asked more questions, impossible questions like, when is everything going to be normal again? That Henry couldn't answer honestly. They'd seen Shirley twice since the separation. Supervised visits arranged through the lawyers, awkward meetings at a family counseling center where a social worker took notes, and everyone pretended things were fine. Shirley had hugged both kids and cried and promised everything would work out. The kids had been quiet and confused, especially when Shirley couldn't explain why she'd done what she'd done in language that made sense to a 9-year-old and a 13-year-old. Henry had waited in the truck both times, staring at his phone, answering work emails, doing anything to keep from thinking about his wife holding their children and lying to them with practiced ease. Christmas came and went without celebration. Henry set up a small tree at Dave's house, and the kids opened presents with forced enthusiasm. Tyler got the video game he'd asked for. Emma got the art supplies she wanted. They thanked him politely and went back to their rooms. Henry called his parents and pretended everything was fine. He worked his maintenance shifts at the school district, fixing broken heating units and replacing burned-out lights, finding comfort in tasks that had clear problems and clear solutions. At night, he lay on Dave's couch and didn't sleep. The truth came out slowly, then all at once. Mike_Riverside42 turned out to be Mike Harrison, a middle manager at the tech firm where Melissa worked. He was 45, married with 3 kids of his own, and wanted absolutely nothing to do with Shirley once his wife found out about the affair. His wife had found out because someone at the Christmas party had seen them together, actually seen them, close and intimate in a way that couldn't be explained away as innocent. Mrs. Harrison had called Melissa's boss. The boss had called Mike. Mike had panicked and claimed Shirley had pursued him, that he'd tried to end it multiple times, that it meant nothing. Whether that was true or not, Henry didn't know and didn't care. The point was that Mike disappeared from Shirley's life completely and immediately. Blocked her number. Had his lawyer send a cease and desist letter when she tried to contact him at work. Made it very clear that their affair was over and had never been serious on his end. Shirley, according to Melissa in a tearful phone call to Tyler that the boy had accidentally put on speaker, was devastated. She thought Mike was going to leave his wife. She'd thought they had a future together. She'd thrown away her marriage for a man who'd been using her and had never intended to leave his own family. Tyler had told Henry this information flatly, his voice carefully empty, before going back to his room and closing the door. "She's an idiot," Dave said that evening, handing Henry a beer they both knew he wouldn't finish. "She blew up her life for a guy who was never going to choose her." "Yep. You feel vindicated?" "No." Henry stared at the beer bottle, condensation running down the glass in slow tracks. "I feel sad. Not for her. For what it all means. Which is that 17 years meant so little to her, she was willing to gamble it all on a man who was always going to choose his own family over her." Henry set the beer down untouched. "That's what hurts. Not the betrayal itself, but how little we must have meant for her to risk it so easily." Dave didn't have an answer for that. By mid-January, the temporary orders were in place. Henry got primary physical custody of Tyler and Emma. Shirley got supervised visitation every other weekend and 1 evening per week. She was required to pay child support based on her part-time income. Not much, barely $300 a month, but the principle mattered. She owed money to Henry now, owed time and resources and accountability. The house stayed in Henry's name. The retirement accounts were split evenly, but Shirley's half went into a restricted fund she couldn't access without court permission. The credit cards were all in Henry's name now, and he'd already changed all the passwords and security questions. Shirley was working 2 jobs now. The library cut her hours when they found out about the affair. Apparently, the head librarian was a friend of Mike's wife. So Shirley had picked up shifts at a grocery store, bagging food and running register, coming home to Melissa's basement with sore feet and resentment in her eyes. Henry knew this because Tyler told him, information gleaned from Emma, who was still talking to her mother on the phone most nights. Henry didn't stop those calls. Emma needed her mother, even a version of her mother who'd made terrible choices. He just monitored them, making sure Shirley wasn't poisoning his daughter against him or making promises she couldn't keep. Mostly, Shirley just cried on the phone and told Emma how sorry she was and how much she missed her. Emma usually came out of these calls red-eyed and quiet. Henry would make her hot chocolate and sit with her until she felt better, not saying anything, just being present, being the solid thing she could lean against. Tyler stopped taking his mother's calls after the third week. When she called, he'd look at the phone, decline it, and go back to whatever he was doing. The first time he did it in front of Henry, he'd look defiant, waiting for his father to tell him to be nicer to his mother. Henry had just nodded and said, "Your choice," because it was. Tyler was old enough to decide how much grace to extend to a parent who'd hurt him. The final hearing was scheduled for mid-February, exactly 8 weeks after Henry had hung his wedding ring on the Christmas tree. Barbara called him the week before with an update. "Shirley's lawyer is pushing for more custody time and reduced child support," she said. "They're claiming financial hardship and arguing that the kids need both parents equally." "What are our chances?" "Excellent. Her lawyer can't overcome the documented affair, the financial deception, or the fact that you've been the primary caregiver throughout the proceedings. The temporary orders are going to become permanent with minimal changes." "Good. There's one thing," Barbara said carefully. "She wants to speak at the hearing. Make a statement to the judge about why she deserves another chance." Henry was silent for a moment. Outside Dave's window, he could see the kids building a snowman in the yard. Emma was packing snow with her mittened hands while Tyler rolled the middle section. They were laughing, actually laughing. The first real laughter he'd heard from them in weeks. "Let her speak," Henry said. "The judge should hear everything." "You're sure?" "Sometimes these statements can be emotionally difficult to sit through." "I'm sure," because Henry wanted the judge to see Shirley exactly as she was. Not the crying victim, not the remorseful wife, but the woman who'd made her choices and now wanted everyone else to carry the consequences for her. The courtroom was smaller than Henry had expected. Just a simple room with wood paneling and fluorescent lights. The judge's bench raised slightly above the rest, an American flag in the corner. It felt more like a principal's office than a place where lives were decided. Henry sat at the plaintiff's table with Barbara. Across the aisle, Shirley sat with her discount lawyer, a young man who looked barely out of law school and kept shuffling papers nervously. Shirley wore a conservative blue dress and minimal makeup. She lost weight. Her eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. Henry felt nothing looking at her. The hearing proceeded quickly. Barbara presented the evidence, the messages, the bank statements, the timeline of the affair. She called character witnesses who testified to Henry's involvement in his children's lives. The school counselor who'd worked with Tyler and Emma described their current stability in their father's care versus the emotional turmoil during visits with their mother. Shirley's lawyer did his best. He talked about rehabilitation and second chances. He mentioned the grocery store job and the efforts she was making to get her life together. He argued that children needed their mothers. Then it was Shirley's turn to speak. She stood slowly, gripping the edge of the table for support. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense, nodded permission. "Your Honor," Shirley began, her voice shaking. "I know I made terrible mistakes. I know I hurt my husband and my children. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking for a chance to be a mother to my kids." She paused, wiping her eyes with a tissue her lawyer had ready. "I was unhappy," she continued. "I felt invisible. I felt like I'd lost myself in being a wife and a mother, and I made the worst possible choice in trying to find myself again. But I've learned from this. I've changed. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm in therapy. I'm doing everything I can to become someone my children can be proud of." Henry watched her perform, because that's what it was, a performance. The tears were real enough, but the words were calculated, designed to appeal to sympathy rather than acknowledge the full weight of what she'd done. "I'm asking this court to give me more time with my children," Shirley said, her voice breaking. I'm asking for a chance to rebuild what I destroyed. They deserve to have both parents who love them. They deserve. Ms. Mercer, the judge interrupted. Do your children deserve a mother who asked their father to pretend he didn't exist so she could meet another man? Shirley froze. Do they deserve a mother who spent their college fund money on secret meetings and expensive gifts for someone who was never going to leave his own family? I didn't. I've read the evidence, Ms. Mercer. All of it. I've seen the messages where you complained about being stuck with your husband, where you fantasized about leaving without telling anyone, where you made plans for a future that didn't include the two children sitting at home waiting for you. The judge's voice was cold. So please don't stand in my courtroom and talk about what your children deserve when you spent 6 months forgetting they existed. Shirley sat down abruptly, her face white. The judge turned to Henry. Mr. Mercer, do you have anything to add? Henry stood. Barbara had prepared a statement for him. 3 pages of carefully crafted words designed to paint him as the wrong party. He'd read it once and set it aside. No, Your Honor, he said simply. The evidence speaks for itself. The judge nodded. Then here's my ruling. She detailed the custody arrangement. Henry got full physical custody, with Shirley getting standard supervised visitation. The house stayed with Henry. The retirement split remained as ordered in the temporary hearing. Child support was set at $400 per month, increased from the temporary amount to account for Shirley's second job. Furthermore, the judge added, Ms. Mercer, you are ordered to attend parenting classes and continue therapy as a condition of maintaining your visitation rights. Any missed child support payments will result in an immediate review of those rights. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Shirley whispered. This court is adjourned. The gavel fell with a sharp crack that echoed in the small room. Shirley sat motionless while her lawyer gathered papers. Henry stood, shook Barbara's hand, and walked out without looking back. In the hallway, Dave was waiting with Tyler and Emma. They'd stayed with him during the hearing, too young to sit through their parents' marriage being picked apart by strangers. How'd it go? Dave asked. We won, Henry said simply. Emma grabbed his hand. Can we go home now? Home. The house on Maple Crest Drive that Henry had left 8 weeks ago with a duffel bag and a broken heart. He'd moved back in the previous week, getting everything ready for the kids to return. He'd finished decorating the Christmas tree that had sat half-lit since the night everything changed. He'd replaced the broken strand of lights and hung new ornaments, ones he bought with the kids, choosing them together at the store, starting new traditions. His wedding ring was gone from the tree. He'd taken it down and put it in a box in the garage, along with the old photo albums and wedding gifts and all the other artifacts of a marriage that no longer existed. Yeah, Henry said, squeezing Emma's hand. We can go home. 1 year later, Henry stood in the same living room where everything had started, decorating the Christmas tree with his children. Every ornament had a place now. Emma's paper snowflake from last year, carefully preserved. Tyler's clay thumbprint from 2nd grade. New ornaments they'd bought together. A silver star Emma had chosen because it sparkled, a wooden train Tyler had liked for reasons he wouldn't explain. The house was quieter with just the 3 of them, but it was also cleaner, more organized, less full of the kind of tension that comes from living with someone who doesn't want to be there. Henry had dated a little. Nothing serious. A few dinners with a woman from the Parent-Teacher Association, a coffee date with someone Dave had tried to set him up with. It was fine, nice even, but he wasn't in a hurry to replace what he'd lost. He was too busy building what he'd found, a life that was his own, with kids who knew they were loved and a house that felt like home instead of a place where people pretended. Tyler had started high school. He'd joined a robotics club and found friends who shared his interests. He still didn't talk to his mother much, but the relationship was less hostile now, more resigned. He sent her a card on her birthday and responded to her texts with brief, polite messages. Emma had her piano recital coming up in 2 weeks. She was playing Fur Elise and was terrible at it, but she practiced every day with determined concentration, and Henry sat on the couch listening and encouraging even when she hit the wrong notes. Shirley still lived in Melissa's basement. She kept her 2 jobs and paid child support every month without fail, probably because she knew missing even one payment would trigger another custody review. She saw the kids every other weekend, supervised visits that had become unsupervised after she'd completed her court-ordered classes and 6 months of therapy. The visits were awkward. The kids came home quiet and moody, processing feelings they didn't have words for yet. But Henry let them go because they needed to figure out their relationship with their mother on their own terms. He never asked about the visits, never pumped them for information or tried to turn them against Shirley. That was her job to do or undo. His job was to be the solid thing they could count on. "Dad," Emma asked, breaking his thoughts. She was holding up a new ornament, a photo frame with a picture of the three of them from last summer, smiling at the camera at the county fair. "Where should I put it?" Henry studied the tree. There was a spot near the top, right in the center where the lights were brightest. "There," he said, pointing. "Right there." Emma stood on her toes to hang it, and Tyler helped her, steadying the frame while she hooked it onto the branch. They stepped back together to admire their work. "It looks good," Tyler said. "Yeah," Emma agreed. "It's perfect." Henry stood behind them, hands in his pockets, and looked at the tree. Every light working, every ornament in its place. The house warm and quiet and solid around them. "It is perfect," he said, and for the first time in a long time, he meant it. Later that night, after the kids had gone to bed, Henry sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee he wasn't drinking. Tomorrow he'd fix a broken water heater at the middle school. Next week he'd help Emma memorize her piano piece. In 2 months, Tyler would have a science fair project due and would need help building whatever elaborate contraption he designed. Normal things. Good things. The kind of life he'd always wanted, just not the way he'd thought he'd get it. His phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. He almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. "I know I don't deserve to ask, but thank you for letting me see the kids. I know you could have made it much harder. S." Henry read it twice. He could respond with anger or bitterness. Could tell her exactly how much damage she'd done and how long it would take to repair. Could make her feel as small and helpless as he'd felt that night on the living room floor, holding broken Christmas lights while his wife asked him to pretend he didn't exist. Instead, he deleted the message without responding, because Shirley didn't deserve his anger. She didn't deserve his attention. She didn't deserve anything from him except the bare minimum the court had ordered. What she deserved was exactly what she got: silence, responsibility, and loss she couldn't undo. And Henry? Henry deserved this moment. This quiet house. These sleeping children. This life he'd built from the pieces of what broke. He'd earned it by refusing to pretend, by choosing to be solid when everything else crumbled, by being the kind of man who fixed broken things, including himself. Henry finished his coffee, rinsed the cup, and turned off the kitchen light. Tomorrow would come with its own repairs and challenges. But tonight, the Christmas tree was lit, the kids were safe, and the house was finally completely his.